Hello and welcome back to a GovGrants demonstration. Today we're going to be going over the grantee's application submission process. So I'm currently logged in as a grantee, and you can see that the grantee's portal looks very similar to CDE's portal, right? It's still got the same layout in general, it's still got the same colors, but there are a couple of minor differences. First is their phases start at the opportunities phase, where they will start by being able to look at the published opportunities, right? The published RFAs that CDE has published. And then they'll go from there. They don't have access to the same planning features that CDE does because they're not managing programs, they're not managing key performance indicators or anything like that, right? So they don't have the planning phase. Their work starts from the opportunities phase. Other than that, though, like I said, it's very similar. They get pending tasks whenever they have things that are due. Like, for example, if they're awarded, and they need to submit quarterly progress reports, then the system will automatically schedule those progress reports on that quarterly basis and assign them to the grantee. And then the grantee will get email communications and pending tasks in order to get those taken care of. So grantees do have pending tasks as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the application process. So we're going to be using the announcement that we did in our last video. So I'm going to go to the opportunities phase. And you can see here, I've got a few different published funding opportunities now, right? Or a few published announcements. And this is the one that we worked on last time. So we're going to go ahead and look at that one. And the way that this is going to work, right, is the grantee will take a look at the announcements that are published, and they will determine which ones they're interested in actually applying for. And what they can do is they can take that longer list of announcements and they can filter it down or shortlist it through a qualification process. So if they're interested in applying for this funding opportunity, they'll click the qualify button and it'll move the announcement from their not yet qualified list, which is that default list that we show, and move it into a qualified list. So that way it's more filtered down. So they can go through all the announcements that they want to go through, qualify the ones that they're interested in, and then from there start working on applications by moving to their qualified list and then going from there. So we've got our qualified announcement. We'll come back into it. And now that we've qualified it, you can see that we have the create application button. There is one situation where they won't directly get the create application button, and that is if letters of intent are required, right? So this announcement was an EXLD announcement, and EXLD doesn't require letters of intent, so that means we can directly start the application. But for EED, some of their grant programs do require letters of intent. So in that case, what happens is this button will instead show a create letter of intent. They'll click that, they'll go through and fill out a very small letter of intent record and then submit that to CDE. Once CDE accepts that letter of intent, then they'll get a pending task to convert that letter of intent into an application. They'll log in to GovGrants, access the letter of intent, and then they'll get a create application button from there. So that's how that works if a letter of intent is required. But in this case, we didn't require one, so we can start right with the application. So we click the create application button, and that's going to open a pop-up window in order to get the application title. Now what we do here is we auto-populate the name of the announcement into the application title, right? But we do allow the grantee to change it if they feel like they need to change it. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to demonstration application and leave it like that. Generally speaking, though, most grantees do leave the application title the same as the announcement title, and that's because when you're going through the application review process, you always have the title and the organization that is applying, right? The applicant organization. And those two things together will tell you, oh, this organization is applying for this announcement. That's why the application title is this, right? So most grantees leave it the same, and that works out to your benefit. But if they feel like they need to name it something different, they still can. From there, we'll click Save and Continue, and that will create the application record and take us right there so we can fill it out. Okay, so here we're on the application record. And as you can see, it's laid out pretty much in a very similar fashion to programs and announcements, which we already covered before. Now, applications, a lot of this information comes in from the published RFA and from the organization's profile, where their core organization information is. So we have the Overview tab, which has the basic information about the organization. You can tell that this is just a very simple test organization because I just have an address, have not provided an EIN or UEI number or an org code as of yet. So these fields will normally be there on production for real organizations. You got the primary place of performance. This is also populated from the organization profile. You've got the opportunity overview, which is populated from the published RFA. And then for EXLD, we have two sections for the school information and the school district information. And so we'll need to fill this out. For EED, they don't have these two sections. For EXLD, they collect this information because they need budgets by school, right? And they need data by district. So the way that this works is we come to the school information section, we click associate, and it's going to list out all of the schools that are available for selection for the organization. And then you can select one or more schools. So I'm just going to select one just to keep things really simple and associate that. And then close the window. And that's going to refresh the page. That way the school gets added to the table. Now that we have the school, let's also go ahead and add the district. The district is going to be filtered so that way you can only select districts where the schools reside. So since I only have Holtville Middle, I can only select the Holtville Unified District. So we'll go ahead and we'll associate that. And then there's a couple of things that we need to fill out. For the school district, it's really simple. We just edit and we can change the title of the superintendent to superintendent. The reason why we don't auto put this in is because later on down the line, we have heard that sometimes they use different titles, so additional titles will likely be added here later. So, but for the time being, we're going to go and select superintendent and save. These other fields being editable is not right. This is a bug. My team is working on getting that fixed. These should not be editable. So we'll save that. And then we've got the school information, and what we can do here is we can provide the title for the executive director school principal. So Mario Garcia is the school principal, for example. We have the EIL code automatically pulled in, as well as other school information automatically pulled in. And then we ask, is program income going to be collected for this school, yes or no? And how much is this school requesting as part of this application? Typically for EXLD applications, there's going to be a list of schools, right? Not just one. And then for each school, there's going to be a requested amount, and then the sum of that is going to be the total amount that they're requesting as part of the application. Just to keep things simple, I'm going to go ahead and put just $10,000 here and save that. And that's pretty much, oh, and that's not quite the overview tab. I forgot there's some other sections down here. So we got the school district information done. We have the application title here, which you can adjust if you need to. And then we have the contacts. The primary user of the organization is automatically populated in, but we need to give them a role as well. And the rule here is that for every application, there has to be at least one authorized agent. So I'll go ahead and I'll assign this person as the authorized agent. Otherwise, the contacts table for the grantee works the same as the grantor. You can associate contacts from your organization profile and add them to the table here. On the bottom, we have the acknowledgement, where they have to put in a comment acknowledging that the application is complete and correct. Generally speaking, you should wait until the application is done, so I'm not going to fill out the acknowledgement right now because we're not done with the application yet, right? So I'll leave that empty for the time being. We'll come back and we'll acknowledge the application later. So let's save our work so far. And we'll go into the budget tab. Okay. So here we have the budget tab. I'm going to go back into edit mode here. You can also see, for example, that the overview tab still has the orange dot because the acknowledgement still hasn't been done yet, and that is required. So that's why the orange dot is still there, even though we mostly finished it. So here in the budget tab, you can see the components, or the grantee can see the components that they have to budget for. You can see the general allocation, admin, and indirect cost values. These are all going to be summarized as their budget is filled out. So the total budgeted amount at this time is 0 because we haven't filled out the budget yet. The indirect cost rate is pulled from the organization profile or the max indirect cost rate on the RFA, whichever is smaller. That will populate here. And then based on the total budgeted amount, we will automatically calculate the potential indirect cost recovery that the grantee could take. And then as they fill the budget out, we'll automatically update the indirect cost taken value from their budget. If admin costs are allowed, then we'll populate the cost rate. And then as they fill out their budget, we'll automatically summarize the admin cost taken for them. And then for program income, if program income is allowed, they can go ahead and estimate how much program income they're expecting. We default it to 0, and 0 is a valid answer. So if they're not expecting program income, they can leave it as 0, and the system will be fine with that. From there, we've got the budget, which we can work on. And the way that for EXLD the budget is broken down is the budget is broken down by budget period first, which we already discussed as part of our announcement demo. And then from there, we have the components table where the components are listed. And under each component, every school is listed with the amount that the school is requesting. And then from there, the budget itself is broken down per school. So you're broken down from budget period down to the component, down to the school, down to the individual object code, and everything can roll back up. So just to keep things really, really, really simple, I'm going to just do 2,000 in certificated personnel salaries for after school base. I'm going to say 2,000 here, and then make sure that that lines up here as well. And then for after school supplemental, I'm going to do the same thing. So 2,000 here, and 2,000 here to make sure that they line up. And the system does check to make sure that everything does line up properly. And then here, same thing. I'm just going to do 2,000 here, 2,000 here. That brings me to 6. So now I just need to do 4,000 here and 4,000 here to bring me to that 10,000 total that I'm asking for the school. And we can go ahead and save that. And now that the budget has been saved, the page is going to refresh. That way we can take those calculations and automatically start applying. So there we go. Up next, we also have the budget narrative. So this is a justification for the budget, right? In order to help justify the project cost. This is a rich text editor with a lot of characters available that they can use in order to justify the budget as much as they possibly can. So project cost narrative is here. Perfect. And let's go ahead and save our work so far. And that's it for the budget tab. Obviously, the budgets for real world situations are going to be a lot more complex, but that's the general layout that the budget follows. And you can see the orange dot went away. We're good to go on the budget tab. Up next, we have the forms and files tab. So in the RFA, right, we specified which application form package we wanted to use. And now on the application, all the forms within that package have automatically populated here for the grantee to fill out. In this case, 6 of them. And in that package, I only had the cover page as mandatory. The rest of these are optional, so that way I don't have to go and fill out all of these forms for the demo. Normally for EXLD, all of these forms are mandatory, and there's even some additional forms that I didn't include in the package for ACES Universal. The package is quite a bit bigger in production with how EXLD is actually going to use it. But again, just wanted to give you an idea, right? So all of the forms populate. The grantee will go in and they'll fill out the forms. And they have to fill out the ones that are mandatory. So let's go fill that one out. I'm going to click edit here, and that's going to take me into the form. Now, as far as the cover page goes, it's relatively straightforward for EXLD. So here in the cover page, we just need to populate the authorized agent name. And I'm just going to say it's myself. Let's see. There we go. And then I can associate additional program contacts as needed. I'm going to go ahead and associate one. Again, just myself. I need to go ahead and add this again real quick because the page refreshed. So here we go. And then down here, there's a simple certification, right, where they're agreeing to the terms and conditions as stated on the certified assurances, which is another form that they have to agree to. And And then the authorized agent name enters their name here. So test user 1. And then they enter the date that they are authorizing this on. Typically it's the current date, right? Which is December 15th in this case. So we'll go ahead and save that. And then what we require the users to do, right, is once they save the form, if it is a mandatory form, the form must be validated before it can be accepted as part of application submission. So they need to click this validate button, and then that has the system run any checks that are necessary for that form. So for the cover page here, it's simply just making sure that all the required fields are complete, that there's at least one program contact, that the certification is done, right? Very simple form. For a more complex form, such as the award calculator form, we're doing calculations, formulas, and logic to make sure that everything lines up with the budget before the form can be validated. So validations can be very simple, like in this case, or very complex, such as in the award calculator form. Now that the form has been validated, we can go ahead and go back to our application. And here in the Forms and Files table, we can now see that this form has indeed been validated. So we are good to go. We could fill out the other forms as well as if we would like to, but again, just to try to keep this video relatively brief, I'm not going to fill any other forms out. Next, we have the supporting documents checklist. So in the RFA, we set up a organization chart as a mandatory attachment. So now here is the grantee. I can download the template, which we attached. In this case, it was just a sample PDF document. I could download that template, fill it out, and then come over here and upload my filled out document, right? So upload the file from my computer and then save that. And now that I've attached that, I have this view link here. So that way, when the application readers are reviewing the application, they can download whatever I attached here as the grantee to make sure that it is a proper organization chart in this particular case. So now that I have attached something here, I have fulfilled the mandatory need to attach something. So I'm good to go here. If I didn't provide something here and I tried to submit the application, I would get an error message saying that there is a mandatory supporting documents checklist item that I have to go in and fill out. From there, I can optionally add files, any additional files that I would like to add to my application. I can also optionally add notes as well. And then we have your typical history and Colab tabs. For grantees don't have access to my feed. And the reason for that is we didn't want grantees to be able to essentially instant message internal users, at least at this point in time. Some divisions within CDE have expressed interest in allowing that, but for the time being, EXLD and EED do not currently want that, so we've disabled that for now. They may change their minds later, in which case we can re-enable that functionality for the grantees. So for the time being, the grantees only have access to the messages functionality where they can send emails from the system, and then replies to those emails can also be captured in the system, just how it operates on the CDE side. So now that we've filled pretty much everything out, we're going to go ahead and edit here. And we're going to acknowledge our application, and that should be our last step before we're allowed to submit it. So I'm going to go ahead and say, certify that this application is complete and accurate. All right, and save. So now that everything is complete, all that has to be done now is validate the application for submission, right? So that way we can do checks to make sure that things like the budget line up with what the school requested and all of that. Make sure that all the mandatory forms are complete, all the mandatory supporting document checklist items have been attached, and then we would be good to go. From there, we would go ahead and submit the application, in which case CDE will then go through the application review process that they set up as part of the program in RFA. And then if selected, the application will eventually be converted to an award, right? Where a award will be drafted and again will be issued. And that's essentially the application submission process from the grantee side. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, hopefully this is more or less what you were looking for. If you do have questions or concerns, as always, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.